Hello, story lovers, and welcome back to my channel, Tales with Tasha. A traditional English pub, a weary traveller, and a strange little girl await in today's haunting ghost story. I am Tasha, and I am a storyteller. I hope you will enjoy the stories on my channel as much as I do. Please let me know what you think of today's tale in the comments. Hit that like button if you enjoy the story, and subscribe to never miss one of my vids. Thank you, lovelies. The story this week is PG-ish. It has a touch of ghostly horror, but there is nothing graphic. Don't forget to stay right to the end for my diva kitties. It's in their contract that you have to, and we don't want to cross cats, do we? With that being said, make sure you're sitting comfortably, and let's jump right on in. Little Mary, Ghostly Meetings and Old Souls by Natasha Duncan Drake. Kate was knackered. She had considered just falling into bed after dumping her bags in her room. She was also starving. Honestly, she was still getting used to being back on the road for her job. She'd been looking after her clients remotely during all the lockdowns, but now they expected to see her face to face. Driving so far and having a full day of work was really doing a number on her. The pub was nice though, one she hadn't been to before. Her client for the day had moved premises, only a few miles down the road, but far enough she couldn't use her normal place. She liked staying in pubs, and this one had a warm atmosphere. It was late. She'd only made it down to the restaurant area just in time for some food. Adding to that, it was Tuesday night and she was by herself except for Lily, the waitress, coming to check on her every now and then. The bar still had plenty of people in it, but she had wanted to spread out a bit, so she had gone for one of the larger tables in the other room. She'd finished her emails and was catching up on Facebook, having polished off a wonderful fish and chips. The only downside of the whole place was the draft that kept chilling the back of her neck. "You should have pudding," a young, childlike voice said, shocking her out of her scrolling. Looking up, she discovered a girl sitting on the other side of the table. Kate had to have been more tired than she thought, because she hadn't remotely noticed the child's arrival. "They're good then?" she asked, doing her best to cover her surprise. "Very," the girl said, bobbing her mane of long dark hair. "I wish I could eat them." "Oh, I'm sorry you can't," Kate replied. "I wasn't allowed to have things I like for a while last year, and I didn't like it at all." The girl shrugged at that. "What's that?" she asked, pointing at Kate's phone. "Oh, I was just reading Facebook," Kate replied with a smile. "I know it's full of useless things, but I like the jokes and the memes." "What's a meme?" was the next question. Kate reassessed her guess at the girl's age down a bit at that. Every tween she knew was aware of what a meme was. They're ideas shared between lots of people, Kate did her best to explain. Usually on Facebook they're pictures with words on them. "Can I see, please?" the girl asked. Kate didn't really want to give her phone to a completely strange little girl, especially one she was beginning to realise looked a little grubby around the edges. "This is one," Kate said, picking up and turning her phone so the girl could see it. The child didn't reach out to try and touch the phone, but she did lean in to take a closer look. That cold draft was back. Kate shivered. "Oh yes, I've seen other people laughing at those. It's funny because it's a party, not a work event," the girl said with a grin after a moment. "I saw that in the newspaper someone was reading." Clearly a bright little girl. "Yes," Kate replied. "If you do something silly these days, you end up a meme." "Then I must make sure not to do anything silly," the girl said, half to herself. "Did you like the fish and chips?" she asked, suddenly changing the subject. "Very much," Kate replied. "A little too much if I'm going to stay here again," she added, "or the lovely food is going to start expanding my waistline." It won't be the food that does that, the girl said. Your name's Kate, isn't it? Once again, a subject changed before Kate could catch up. She had forgotten what talking to children could be like sometimes. Yes, it is. How did you know that? She asked, putting her phone back on the table. I saw you checking in earlier, the girl replied. And what's your name? Kate asked. Mary, was the swift reply that came along with a smile. And how old are you, Mary? I was 10, the girl replied, peering at Kate's phone again. Do you have, She screwed up her nose as if trying to remember something. Tube? Kate suggested. She couldn't help noticing the girl's clothes looked rather old and not fashionable at all. Mary clearly didn't have a phone of her own. Yes, that's it, Mary said. I've seen people watching it sometimes. They laugh a lot. I do have YouTube, Kate replied. Would you like me to find us something funny to watch for a few minutes? Mary nodded enthusiastically. Doing her best to ignore the draft that suddenly seemed to be constant, Kate flicked open the YouTube app and went to one of her subscriptions which she knew would be child-safe. Mary laughed so loudly and with such joy as Roadrunner got the better of Wile E. Coyote that Kate didn't have the heart to simply end it there. You should definitely have pudding, Mary said as Kate found them cartoon number 5. The treacle sponge is very good. That would be unfair if you can't have any, Kate replied. Oh, I don't mind, Mary said with another bright smile. I like to watch people enjoy what I can't have. I like to see people happy, and Lily will come back in a minute. There wasn't really much Kate could say to that. Is there anything I can get you that you are allowed to have? She asked. No, but thank you, the little girl replied. And then Mary was giggling at Bugs Bunny only a moment later when Lily did indeed appear once more in the dining room. Everything all right? Lily asked, as cheerful as she had been all evening. Yes, thank you, Kate replied. It was delicious. And can I tempt you with dessert? Well, I have heard you do a very good treacle sponge, Kate replied, and Mary gave her a grin for that. Ah, our secret is out, Lily said with a laugh. Would you like that with cream, custard, or ice cream? Custard, Mary said before going back to her cartoon. Strangely, Lily frowned for a moment without seeming to realise it and remained with her pencil poised. Custard, thank you, Kate replied, deciding the cartoon must have been too loud for Lily to hear Mary properly. Coming right up, Lily said, and put her pad back in her pocket before picking up the used plate and cutlery. I take it the staff don't mind you being here then, Kate said after Lily disappeared back towards the bar. Oh no, Mary replied, most of her attention on the cartoon she was watching. Most of the time they don't even notice me. Kate wasn't sure if that was a good thing or bad thing, but Mary laughed again and she mostly forgot about it. The treacle sponge was indeed delicious when it arrived. Mary had definitely been right. In honour of all kinds of sponges everywhere, Kate switched to SpongeBob for Mary to watch next. It's getting rather late, Kate said about half an hour later. I'm afraid I'm going to have to go to bed. Mary turned to her then, a serious expression on her face as she looked at Kate with her surprisingly dark eyes. It is, she said, with that wisdom beyond her years. The draft Kate had all but forgotten about seemed suddenly a lot colder. I like you, Mary said and smiled again. For the first time, the little girl pulled her hands from beneath the table, something Kate only realised as she did it. One of her small hands was grasping a small object, which Mary placed on the table next to Kate's. This is for you, Mary said. It's a wish. Thank you, Kate said, looking at the small Hessian bag on the table and touching it lightly with her fingers, but she looked back up and all her words left her. Like a bad signal, Mary's outline fractured. The little girl's grubby skin went black and white, shadows standing out as if her contrast had suddenly been turned up. For a moment, Kate couldn't breathe, even as Mary, still smiling, faded away. She was still sitting there, just staring, when Lily came to check on her. "Are you all right?" Lily asked. Kate turned to look at the waitress, opening her mouth a couple of times, but not really knowing what to say. "There was a little girl," she finally said. "Oh," Lily said and sank into the seat Mary had so recently been occupying. "You met Mary then?" "She was right there," Kate said, indicating the chair a bit more emphatically than she originally intended. "I thought she was a normal little girl. Then she faded away." "You spoke to her?" Lily asked, and it finally occurred to Kate that every time Lily had come in, she hadn't been politely ignoring Mary. The waitress hadn't actually seen her. "Didn't you hear us?" Kate asked. "Only a little. I thought you were talking on your phone," Lily revealed. "Not many people get to talk to Mary. She must like you." She said that just before she disappeared, Kate said, wondering if she was losing it. "We often feel her around," Lily explained, "and she moves things on occasion. But most of us only glimpse her out of the corner of our eyes once in a blue moon." "Who was she?" Kate asked, more to convince herself that she hadn't just hallucinated the whole evening. "She was a local farmer's daughter a long time ago," Lily said, apparently quite happy to explain. "She was hanged just outside here for witchcraft." "Witchcraft?" Kate said, voice climbing high in disbelief. "But she was only 10. "There was a scare went through here in her time," Lily replied, "and poor little thing got caught up in it. As the story goes, though, she got her revenge on those who accused her, the landlord of the pub and his wife, haunted them to their graves. After that, though, she settled down. I've always thought she was waiting for something." Kate's heart broke a little for the poor little girl mixed up in the machinations of adults. "Thank you," she said. "Are you going to be okay?" Lily asked gently. "I can get you a brandy if you need one, on the house." Kate managed to raise a small smile at that. "Thanks, but I have to drive early tomorrow," she replied. "I wouldn't mind a decent cup of tea, though." "Coming right up," Lily replied and patted her hand. Kate was surprised to find she slept well that night, despite her encounter with Mary. She realised she had had a strange feeling from the moment she entered the pub, and after Mary had disappeared, it was gone. In the morning she packed up, had breakfast, paid her bill and went home. It was only a couple of days later she realised she had kept Mary's gift in the pocket of her jacket. She popped it into her bedside drawer and thought no more of it. 2 months later, she broke down in tears all over her husband Matt when she discovered she was pregnant. They had tried for over 18 months a couple of years before, until the experts had told her it was unlikely she would ever conceive naturally due to a problem with her eggs. They'd even been talking about fertility treatment before the pandemic had happened, and had had to put it off because Matt had been made redundant. Matt had a new job now, but they hadn't started discussing children again yet. Kate couldn't help thinking back to Mary, what the little girl had said about her waistline expanding, and the gift Mary had given her. While she was in town picking up a few things she was going to need now, she took the little bag to a small shop that most knew locally as the Witchy Shop. It was actually called Moonlight. "Hello," she said, walking up to the counter as her fingers played with the little bag in her pocket. "Good morning," the woman at the till said with a big smile. "How can I help you today?" "Do you practice magic?" Kate asked, feeling a little ridiculous. "We do," the woman replied, apparently perfectly happy to be open about it. "But only white magic." "Would it be possible to tell me what this is, please?" Kate asked, putting Mary's gift on the countertop. "Oh," the woman said, looking at the little bag as if she could see something Kate couldn't. "That is potent. May I open it?" Kate nodded. The woman held her hand over the bag for a moment and whispered something, before undoing the little drawstring. She glanced inside, not taking anything out, but checking carefully and sniffing at it. "I think it's a fertility charm," she said eventually. Kate couldn't help it. She laughed quietly. "I guessed as much," she said, feeling a little faint as her suspicions were confirmed. "Thank you very much. How much do I owe you for the consultation?" "Nothing," the woman replied, "but I think you need to come and sit down. Let me make you a cup of tea, and you can tell me the story behind the charm." Kate didn't have the will to resist, and by the time she finally left, she had a new friend in Wilhelmina. In fact, Wilhelmina ended up godmother to Kate and Matt's daughter Rosemary when she was born, hearty and healthy, about 8 months later. As Wilhelmina liked to say, it was always good to have a witch on your side. When Rose was a very precocious 3, she looked at Kate with her surprisingly dark eyes and said, "Mummy, you are the best mummy. I'm glad I chose you. I'm going to forget the before times now." Have you stayed in a haunted pub or hotel? I'm pretty sure I have. I didn't come out from under the covers all night. Let me know your stories in the comments. Please, give the vid a thumbs up and like it. And if you would be so kind, click that subscribe button and the bell icon. You'll never miss any content, and it really helps me and boosts the channel. It's totally free. Thank you so much. There is an ebook of the story on Amazon, etc. if you would like a copy to add to your collection. There is a link in the description, or scan the QR code on screen now. The Child Ghost micro stories for this week are also in the book, but don't forget to check them out on YouTube as well. Each is 1 minute of horror to chill your bones. As promised, here are the pretty kitties. Thank you for watching, and check out my other stories on screen now, or my link in the description for my other books and blog. I have a newsletter if you'd like some free books too.